Hi guys, my name is Sean. I'm a houseplant enthusiast from Jakarta, Indonesia. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about plants in tight pots, and that is a subject that is very close to my heart. I'm basically going to tell you why we want to keep our plants in smaller pots, keeping their root ball tight. So yeah, let's go down the list. But before we get started, I guess it's worth mentioning that there's an argument out there that plants, they actually grow in the wild, so they have all these areas where they can spread out. They need all this space for their roots, so we should not put them in tight pots. In fact, a lot of the traditional plant growers will have like tiny little plants in huge pots because they think that they will need all that space, and more space means the plant is going to grow bigger and faster and healthier. But I'm going to disprove that, because a lot of the houseplants that we grow are actually from the tropical rainforest, believe it or not. Of course, there are some your desert cacti and all those things, but we're not going to talk about those plants right now. But a lot of these plants in nature, they're going to be competing each other for space. They don't really have a lot of areas for roots and things like that. So it is not like they can just spread out anywhere they like. And believe me, the competition is actually very good for them. It allows the strongest to survive, to live. It's basically what is the word for it? Survival of the fittest. And that brings me to point number one. When plants are competing for space, when they're in these little pots, they're actually pushing out a lot of their energy into the leaves, because the roots are pretty root bound, so they know that they need to keep growing upwards. And as you know, plants can be propagated by stem cuttings, and this is the evolution of plants and their adaptability into their environments. So they will push out more energy, they put more priority into pushing out leaves and quote-unquote flowers. So when you have plants in tight pots, actually the plant is not busy just putting out roots after roots. The plant will start pushing out more leaves. Number two, a lot of plants actually do need to be in tight pots for them to flower or for them to put out pups. For example, when you have your spider plants, I find that they put out these pups way easier, way faster when they are in tighter pots. And a lot of your jungle cacti and a lot of the flowering species, they will try to spread out. They will try to spread out their roots and leaves, but once they feel like, okay, that's it, you guys, we need to bloom, we need to flower, we need to fruit, because otherwise we're just gonna die, we're gonna suffocate in this space. So that really forces them to thrive. Reason number three, if you've bought pots before, you'll know that small pots cost a little bit less than bigger pots. So you're actually saving a little bit of cost when you have smaller pots. Number four, when you have two different plants, let's say you have this and you have the same plant in a big pot, you're less likely to overwater this plant because it is in such a small pot. In fact, I do water this guy every day. So I notice that it will get dry pretty fast because there's not much soil in there. This is probably about 60 to 70% root ball in here. So any water that you give it, it will drink it up, and then it will be thirsty again tomorrow. Whereas the one that is in a bigger pot, you have more water sitting around, the root ball is not that big, and when you have a lot of water, you also have a lot of rot, you have a lot of disease like fungus and bacteria. So yeah, and point number five, which relates to the point before, is that you actually need less water. When you have a plant grown in a small pot, you need less water than a plant that is grown in a big pot, because imagine like you have to water the whole pot and you have to let the water come through. And in our world today, water is very precious, so this is one way that we can conserve water. Number six, we do fertilize and put pesticides on our plants. So when you have them in a smaller pot, you need less fertilizer and you need less pesticides. And believe me when I say that all of these are actually pretty bad for the environment. Like pesticides and fertilizer should not run off into our grounds and into our seawater, because they will promote algae, it will poison our fish supply. So yeah, that really is an eco-friendly way when you have plants in a smaller pot. Number seven, smaller pots are just so much more aesthetically pleasing. I have this in a big pot because I bought it in a big pot, and this is just a cutting actually. This is so much sexier, look at it. You can actually put these in so many different types of cover pots and it will just look so good. Look at that, when you have them in small pots, you have so many options for cover pots that you can, sorry. Yeah, that is looking pretty. So it's just so much nicer, and your leaves are gonna look much bigger when you have them in smaller pots. Imagine if you have like big pots but small leaves, that is just super sad. And the next point, I guess I kind of spoiled it in the last one, is that the plant looks bigger when you have them in a small pot. Look at this. The pot is a little bit smaller than the foliage. Of course, every species is different. I'm just grabbing this one because it's in my hand. But the plant will look much bigger when it's in a small pot. And I guess we all like big plants, right? So, and the next point, I lost track of which point this is. But the next point is that you can fit in so many more plants. Look at them. These are all in small pots. You can fit a lot more of them in your space. You can buy more plants. So when you keep them in small pots, you have more room for more plants. Yay. So I guess that's it, but I want to keep a few disclaimers here. You do want your plant to take up about 70% of the root ball space. Any more than that, it is time to repot it, because you don't want it to be too constricted in there. You don't want it to be too root bound. When you see that your plant has stopped growing or stunted growing, it is probably because it's gone root bound. Or another way to know that it's root bound is that you may have to water that plant a lot more often, because there's not much soil there to retain moisture, and you should repot them. So for me personally, I prefer to keep them in small pots, but I will repot them very, very frequently. I would say every 6 to 9 months in general for most plants. That's how I repot them. And I will always repot them to just one size bigger, not much bigger than what it is now. And before I let you guys go, there are some plants that you should not give a small pots to, namely calatheas or some alocasias. And basically these are plants that are rhizomatous, is that the right word? Where they will put out bulbs on the side and they will grow rhizomes that grows laterally, sideways under the soil. So if you keep them in small pots, it really restricts their growth. Sansevierias or dracaenas are also the same. So if you put them in too tight of a pot, you'll see that they will really push out from new growth from the very edge of the pots, and that sometimes will constrict them too much. Of course, one way that you can control this is to just keep propagating them, which I really love to do. I actually keep my alocasias in pretty tight pots. This one here, actually, this is putting out a little baby pup here. How cute, right? So the pup here can actually be its own plant. I can remove it. But this plant, this Alocasia cuprea, has given me so many babies. So one of the ways that you can prevent overcrowding is just to repot it. I will take this out, take off the bulbs, or if the rhizome is big enough, I'll just cut off the rhizomes and I will propagate it to leave more room, because otherwise this can get overcrowded really fast with root ball of the parent plant, also root balls from the baby plants. So yeah, just keep in mind a lot of the plants that grows rhizomes and things like that, they may need space to spread out under there in the potting mix. So not all plants are suitable for tight pots. But I can tell you for sure, begonias, they love tight pots, because here in my climate they get underwatered. Because here in my climate they get overwatered easily, they rot so easily. And also a lot of peperomias, they really love tight pots. So just keep that in mind. So I guess that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm at Botanist on Instagram if you want to DM me on any questions regarding plant care and propagations. I'll try my best to get back to you. Meanwhile, do take care and stay safe. I will see you in the next video. Bye.